So about a month ago, I was given a choice. I had two trials in front of me, one being the Seneonice, the implantable CGM Eversense. They had thought that they had a implantable CGM that could last for a whole year, and so they were trying to demonstrate that, to the FDA that it would last that year, and that trial was super intriguing. And then on the other hand, I had Samvita, which is making the one-touch sensor, which is a brand new CGM on market. And it was a tough choice. Ultimately, I went with Samvita. The Seneonice trial was super, super interesting to me, and I really wanted to do it. But at the same time, when I was making this decision, my wife, she had to get a couple lidocaine shots for a small surgery that she had. And maybe she was being a little bit dramatic here, but she was like, that lidocaine shot was the worst pain I've ever been in. And she's given birth before, so this was like her saying something. And so with this Seneonice trial, I was going to need to get a lidocaine shot in this arm, and then they're going to need to, do the incision and slip the thing under. And then in a year, they were going to need to do that again. Not only did they have to do that on this arm, but they had to do it on this other arm too. So she's like, dude, two lidocaine shots, and then two more a year later. She's like, dude, don't do it. That's not worth it. And then the other determining factor was that it was going to actually take a lot of work. I was going to constantly need to, apply two sensors, get it right on the spot. I was going to need to check my blood sugar a ton of times a day. And it was going to last a whole year, which meant I couldn't do any other trials for the full year. Okay. And then the Samvita trial, it was only a month long. It was 5 days spread out over 3 weeks, which, yeah, I missed a lot of work, and that kind of made work pretty stressful, but it paid very well. Like it paid more than half of what I was going to make in that whole year of the Seneonice trial. So I knew there were other trials down the pipeline. It just made financial sense. And honestly, like this Samvita trial, it was so easy. Like I just had to show up to the clinics and just get my blood drawn through an IV. I didn't need to check my blood sugar at home. It was very easy on my part. I just needed to show up and relax and eat food and watch movies. But since this one-touch sensor is, kind of in the early stages, I don't think that's right, and I don't think the company would want me to show it, so I'm not going to do that. But it did get me thinking: is there room for another CGM on the market? So at least here in the U.S., there's four main CGMs, right? There's the Dexcom, and there's the freestyle libre, there's the Medtronic Guardian sensor, and there's the Seneonice Eversense, the implantable CGM. And all four of them kind of have their own unique characteristics which differentiate them in the market. The Eversense sensor is the biggest example of something with a differentiating factor, and that's that it is literally like implanted in you, and then you don't need to constantly be inserting new copper wires in you when you put in new sensors. You just put new adhesive on to put the sensor over it, and it just communicates wirelessly with that device that's implanted in you, right? Prime example of a differentiating factor. The Dexcom has its differentiating factor in that it's the most accurate CGM on the market, and it's got partnerships with all these different brands, right? It's got partnerships with Omnipod, it's got partnerships with Tandem, and it's just the most established player on the market, and they've negotiated like crazy and gotten on like every formulary possible. The freestyle libre's differentiating factor is that, with each generation, it's kind of been the smallest sensor on the market, and that's definitely going to be the case with the Libre 3, at least compared to the Dexcom G7. The ones that I've used in the trial, the Libre 3 is just smaller. Both are tiny, but the Libre 3 is a little bit smaller. And their other factor is that typically they are much more affordable than the other CGMs. And then last but not least, we got the Medtronic Guardian sensors, which its differentiating factor is that it works with Medtronic pumps. I kind of just did a whole video about that and why it's not enough and the problems that it's causing. So if you haven't seen that yet, I'll put a link up here. Definitely check it out. Really cool video, especially if you're into like the business side of things. So what is something that could differentiate a fifth sensor on the market? Well, I think that the most obvious choice, and I kind of talked about this in that Medtronic video, is something that's as accurate as Dexcom, or maybe just a step below it, but more affordable. I think that really is the sweet spot that a company is failing to hit. I do think that if it were to be that case, it would absolutely need to integrate with insulin pumps. Primarily, Tandem would be the most obvious choice because Tandem seems to be the most willing to work with all the CGMs. But Omnipod definitely would be a plus. I think that another way that the CGM could differentiate itself would be to have longer life, right? So the Libre for a while has had 14-day life, and that's kind of always been the gold standard, right? The Dexcom G7 is eventually going to be targeting a 15-day wear time. What if the sensor could last longer? I mean, what if this could last 3 weeks or maybe even a month? I mean, can you imagine wearing one sensor for a month that doesn't need to be surgically implanted? That would be pretty cool. Now, obviously, like, there's biological reasons why this is difficult for it to happen. Whenever the body, recognizes something that's foreign, the immune system is going to attack it, and that's kind of why sensors don't last indefinitely. Is just the longer they're in the body, the weaker it gets, right? But if you could figure out how to do this, that would also help drive down costs, right? You're only providing them one sensor, but the insurance is going to pay you for an entire month of CGM. So compare that to the Dexcom, like a Dexcom G7, when it launches with 10 days, the insurance is going to cover 1 month of CGM, and then Dexcom needs to provide 3 CGMs for that. If you could just provide 1 CGM for that, get the same payment for that, then your cost is a third lower than what Dexcom's is. These are just a few of my ideas. One thing's for sure, though, is that it does need to have something that's going to differentiate itself, right? People are not going to switch just to switch. They're going to need to switch because it's going to solve a pain point, or it's going to provide some big advantage, or it's going to provide some cost savings. If you release a sensor that's just like the other ones, it's going to be dead on arrival. Another thing that is very important and must happen is it must have integration with insulin pumps, right? This is where CGM is headed, is being a vital part of the closed loop. So anyways, these were just some of the thoughts that I was having while I was doing this trial. I've kind of mentioned this before in my other videos. I am super pro competition. And so if another sensor can come on the market and be competitive and have a compelling reason, then that will just motivate the other manufacturers, the Dexcom and the freestyle libres to get that much better, right? I firmly believe that the reason that the Dexcom G7 is one piece and doesn't have the separate transmitter is because the Libre is on the market. So if we can have another Libre that's going to, spur competition, then absolutely I'm all for it. If you guys have any thoughts about what this 5th sensor can do to differentiate itself, I would love to hear it down in the comments. Quick programming note, I am expecting to get the Omnipod 5 any day. I have the pods themselves, I just didn't get the intro kit. So make sure you're subscribed because I am super excited to share my thoughts on Omnipod 5. And we'll see you next time.